Welcome to another episode of the Zambezi Belle podcast. Today we have a wonderful guest, my little sister, Dr. Wendy Bartley. Dr. Wendy Tokozani Bartley is a woman of fierce ambition, loyalty, and class. She hails from Malawi, also known as the warm heart of Africa, for the friendliness of her people. She migrated to Michigan with her parents, the late Dr. Wenson and Mrs. Rosemary Masoka, and had three sisters at the age of 9. She's a graduate of Andrews University and Loma Linda University, where the culmination of her journey celebrated her as a doctor of physical therapy. She's happily married to her love, Pastor Victor K. Bartley. They reside in North Carolina, where they relish in their most influential role as parents to their three precious jewels, born and identical twin girls, Michaela and Micaiah. Above all else, she is a devoted disciple of Jesus of Nazareth, a daughter of the Creator King. Everybody, welcome Dr. Wendy.
Hello.
I am so excited to have this conversation with you because, once a little sister, always a little sister.
Oh,
So it's always hard to
always.
see you as a grown woman.
I know. It's true. I have to remind myself at times too.
We're going to start by a word of prayer.
Absolutely.
Let's pray. Our kind and gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for this amazing day that you've given us. Thank you for the gift of life. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to sit and talk as sisters. Thank you for all the healing that you're doing in our lives as we heal together, working towards wholeness, working towards being the women that you have called us to be. Please forgive us for all our sins. Please help us in everything that we do to consult with you and to live intentionally and to live lives that glorify you. We love you, we honor you, we praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Well, let's dig right in. Tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and your childhood and moving to the States when you were 9 years old.
Oh, wow. All in a few minutes. Okay. As you said, I am a daughter of Christ. I am a wife. I am a mother, a proud wife, a proud mother, and really on a mission to continue to live out the purpose in my life and to do what God has called me to do. Coming from Malawi at a very young age, it's been a journey that I don't take for granted, but also one that brings with it challenges. Come to a new country from very young age. And so it's almost like you're immersed into different cultures. And honestly, I've now lived in the United States longer than I have been in Malawi. But I appreciate all the various cultures that have come together to make up who I am. And I'm proud of who I am, even at this moment in my life.
What was your journey like pursuing your career as a physical therapist?
That journey was a very interesting journey because there are a lot of intricate details in that journey itself. So I'll try to be as brief as possible, but to also give a much fuller picture. Growing up as African, the options out there, as many of us know, were not a lot. Healthcare was the secure option, and it was the option because it's what's going to pay the bills. It's what's going to bring you security. It's what's going to allow you to be able to have the life of security, really. And it took me a while to understand that that's what my parents were trying to do. But so for me, healthcare was always it. Everything I did, high school, college, was pointing toward healthcare. At some point, I wanted to be an OBGYN, changed my mind about that, and then decided to eventually go into physical therapy. The interesting part about going into physical therapy was I grew up in Berrien Springs, Michigan, and right there was Andrews University. I did my undergrad at Andrews University, and I was ready to join I had applied for the PT program and was doing my prerequisites for the pre-PT to get in. They required a GRE.
Okay.
And as academically astute as I was, standardized tests are not my thing. And so when I took it the first time, I didn't do well. I took it the second time, I did better and was ready to apply because there was a certain score you had to get. When I got the score that I needed to get, Andrews University changed up the score. I don't want it to be painted as, oh my goodness, it was because of me. No, it was just something
No,
that they had done because
they changed in the system.
they changed it to where now it was higher. And also keep in mind that around the time I was going through and getting my DPT, it wasn't necessarily new, but they were changing a lot of requirements because it was becoming more and more competitive. So they
Mm.
changed up the score, and that change in score was now the score I had was less than what they needed. And I said, you gotta be kidding me. So I took a little break and just kind of, I was teaching at the biology department as an assistant teacher at
Mm-hmm.
Andrews and just doing, other things. Life wasn't what I had pictured it would be at that point.
Yeah.
But over time, I decided then to take it again with, at that time, my boyfriend then I met Victor, who really now my husband, who was like, hey, try it again. You never know. And I tried it again. I didn't pass.
Oh.
And I was devastated as a perfectionist, as
Mm-hmm.
a student who wants to have like best, the greatest, the everything. Right?
Yes.
So then I said, I'm taking a step back because this is emotionally draining for me. And while doing that, I don't remember what exactly happened, but I went online, I researched about all the different schools that were for PT. And maybe there were some
Mm-hmm.
that required the score that I had. And not necessarily
Mm-hmm.
Andrews. At that point, Andrews was the only thing I was thinking about, Andrews University.
Yeah.
So I look up and I see that there were other schools that did not require GRE. I said, get out, because I had everything. I had the grades, I had the GPA, I had everything but this GRE score.
Yeah.
And so I look up, I see a list of schools. There were 3 schools. Loma Linda University was one of them. And I said, what? Okay. Howard University. And I think there was another university out in the Midwest. I don't remember the name. So I was like, let me apply. I mean, who knows? I have everything else that they require. And wouldn't you know it, I was able to get into Loma Linda University based on that uncharted course of really failure being turned into pivoting and
Yeah.
finding out a different way to get to a goal that I
Yes.
needed. And over time, God has shown me that Andrews was not it. And that door was closed, and it was closed for a reason. Granted, at the time, here I am leaving home for the first time, and
Yes.
not just leaving home and moving 3 hours away, moving across the country.
Yes.
That was a whole different experience, but it was exactly what I needed. And that's really what pushed me into a career in physical therapy. And what pulled me even more into physical therapy was what I'm very passionate about, holistic health, where I'm not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily the medicine I prescribe to you is not medicine. It's you using your own body to heal yourself.
Yeah.
And so that's something that really appeals to me in physical therapy and launched me into the career that I had.
That's incredible because, sometimes we get so focused and tunnel vision, and you were focused and tunnel vision, and you were thinking Andrews University for PT school, Andrews University for PT school. But the minute you realize that there is other ways of doing something, and it's not
Absolutely.
always
Yes.
just one way of doing something, you were able
Yeah.
to pivot.
Yep. That's really it, and their themes, and I see even as we're talking now, I'm realizing that that theme of Wendy becoming tunnel vision is very
Yeah.
real, and
Yeah.
God gently coming beside me and saying, "Let's open up the lens here a little bit.
Yes.
This is not what I want for you right now. What I want for you is a little bit bigger than what you're thinking about." And so having the willingness to really surrender
Yes.
and say, "Okay, God, let's open up the lens just a little bit more."
Wow. So you mentioned Victor, your husband.
Yes.
How did you meet him? Where did you meet him? And what was dating like for a young Christian pastor's daughter like you who ended up marrying a pastor?
So the thing that I always say is I was not looking for a pastor. Now,
I believe that
granted,
100%.
yeah, definitely was not looking for a pastor, but not in the
Yeah.
sense of like I was repulsed by them. Because if there was one example of what pastoral ministry is, it was my dad. And
Yeah.
I had the best example ever. Not
Yes.
wanting to be a pastor, sometimes as pastors' kids, as you know, there are many of us who don't want to marry a pastor because we've seen.
Yes.
Oh, and whether it's a character in our own parents or whether it's just the work itself. But I had a
Yes.
father with such a character of integrity. And so for
Yes.
me, I didn't my not wanting a pastor was not because I was repulsed by it because of what I saw in the home. No, it just wasn't something I was looking for.
Yeah.
But when I met at Andrews University, I was finishing up my undergrad and he had come in for his Masters of Divinity. And so that we met. The story is kind of funny. I was talking to somebody before I met Victor who Victor knew. That didn't work out. But even let's rewind a little bit. I had my first official boyfriend that I will
Mhm.
say I had a boyfriend. I went through an ugly breakup.
Mhm.
And I remember crying to God and saying, "I never wanna do this again.
Wow.
This is too emotionally taxing for me." I'm a person who, when I get connected with somebody, I get connected and I get invested.
Yes.
And that was a very ugly. It wasn't cute. And I told God, I said, "I don't wanna do this over and over again until I find the one." So
Wow.
that I was very, very clear about in my conversation with God. So fast forward to meeting Victor. Um, when when I met Victor, he sings beautiful, beautiful voice. And so my sister Winnie was the music director at our church at that time. And so I was like,
Mhm.
"Winnie, we should invite him to come sing. So I just want to hear him sing." And so free game, y'all. This is free game, okay? So
Hey, you
I
saw what you wanted. You had to find a way.
So we invited him to come sing at our church. And him being the gentleman that he is, he came and he sang. And he tells me that that day there was a lot of giggling on my part, but I said, "Okay, whatever." But I found out that he was dating somebody. And so for me, it was
Oh,
like, oh, yeah, 20 steps back. It was
yes.
great to know you. I wish you the best. And that really was it. And I think it was probably a few months later, Winnie kept in contact with him. I was like, "Hey, we have this going on at our church. And my sister Winnie is the social butterfly of our family. And we'll keep in contact with everybody and anybody. She's really great at making friendships." So
Yeah.
I think it was like some months later, he was no longer dating the person that he was with. And so we somehow reconnected at Vespers where we were seeing each other on campus and we had mutual friends. And so I was like, "Hey, how are you? I'm good. Hey, how are you? I'm good." We exchanged numbers. He asked if we wanted to go bowling, and I said no, but somehow we just continued texting, and the rest is history. There's a story
Wow.
that I always share when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to Victor because I think it's also important. I remember when Victor and I when we started talking before we put any labels on it. I'm a label person, and so before we put any labels on it, Victor and I probably talked for some months before we officially became boyfriend and girlfriend. And I even remember my sister was like, "How long are y'all gonna talk? Is make sure he ain't leading you on." I'm like, "No, he's not." But when we first started talking, Victor came to me and said, "I am interested in a few women." And
Mm-hmm.
that statement, when he said it, I
Yeah.
was like, "Okay." But if he would have said that statement 6 months prior, I would have been like, "How dare you? What do you
Huh.
mean? What do you mean you're
So what
interested in?"
changed?
So what changed was I mentioned about there was somebody else talking to before I started talking with Victor. That
Mm-hmm.
person was not, honest in their dealings,
Mm. Mm.
and I found out that as they were, getting to know me, they were also getting to know other people,
Other
but
people.
it wasn't with honesty. It was like, I don't feel like going to Vespers, Vespers was a big thing, especially in
Yeah.
the college age and in Barron Springs at Andrews University. "Oh, I don't feel like going to Vespers tonight." Okay, but then you find they are at Vespers with somebody else.
With
So
somebody
they
else.
were not honest. And I remember there was a male friend of mine who one day, I think he kind of knew what was going on, and he asked me, he's like, "Why are you not having a conversation with this person? Why are you not telling them your intentions and see what they say?" You're
Hmm.
basically putting yourself through all of these emotions of trying to figure out, like, "Oh, I'm just going to wait to see what he's going to say." Speak up for what you want, even as a woman.
Yeah.
So I remember saying, "Hey, I need to talk to you." And I talked to him. I said, "Listen, I like you and I don't know exactly where you are. And I would like to know so that I can know how to move forward. Because if you don't feel the same way, I would prefer that we be able to go our separate ways." That was
Woo!
a pivotal conversation for me. When I tell you, because that's not Wendy. That is not, Wendy is not one to, Wendy's not one to
Wow. That
up and go.
is huge.
It was huge. It was life shifting and life changing because for the first time, I realized how much power I have as a woman when dating.
Yes.
There's
Yes.
power. Like, it's not just to sit and wait for a guy to come and tell you the right
Yeah.
things and this and that. No,
Yes.
it's about not allowing yourself to be put in situations that are draining you emotionally, spiritually, and maybe sometimes even physically,
Woo!
right? So
Girl, preach.
it would I'll never forget. I know exactly where I was in Berry Springs. My favorite park. I up to the day when I go to Michigan, I still go visit
Yeah.
this place because it was a really great place for me. It was a place I would go to think. And I decided to have this conversation with this individual
Where
at
is
that.
that park?
Oh my goodness. I'm not good with street names, but it's the park that's like by the water.
Yes. I was gonna say when there's so many things that we are very similar.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
that park was my place. And every
Yeah.
time I pass through Barron Springs, I go back to that park.
With that
The one
bench
that's it's like at the end of the road by the river, by
and
St. Joseph River. Yes. And there's actually a swing that you
yes.
can, it's either a swing or a bench or something you can
Yes.
sit facing the water.
Yep. Yes, that
Girl, that's
was
my park
my
right there. I even took my
oh,
husband to go see that park.
I took Victor, I said, "This is what" I would go when I'd have rough days
Yes.
and just sit,
Yes.
and
That
there was
was
a
my place of thinking right
calm.
there.
Yes, I've never found anything like it. But yeah, so I took him there, had that conversation with him, and it was so funny because after the conversation, I was like, "Thank you." And it was like, "Oh my gosh, I feel bad. Are you okay?" I said, "You don't realize how free I feel right now."
Yeah.
I'm not hurt. I'm not upset. I know and I'm clear. And I'm so grateful for my friend who encouraged me to have that conversation, because then when Victor said what he said, I appreciated it because I said, you know what? You're being honest with me. And that's the
Yes.
one thing that I've been asking God for is
Yes.
honesty. Because I just came out of talking to somebody else who wasn't honest. So the very fact that you're coming to me and being extremely honest that, hey, there are other women who I'm talking to right now, not like I'm not dating them, but I'm getting to know them just like I'm getting to know you. And I said, okay. And Victor will share
That
that
is
he was
something though.
it really was, because Victor will share that he was very shocked by my response. And I think it was probably like within that week, he came and he was like, yeah, no, I'm not talking to anybody. Because he was like, she is like, I'm not sitting around and waiting for you to do whatever it is you
Yes.
need to do.
Yes.
You want to do you, but you're not going to do you at my expense. Right.
And that is
So,
so powerful, what you're saying to that girl that is dating or that woman that is dating, because understanding that you have the power. Because I feel like part of this is how we are raised, especially
yes.
in our African culture and in our
Mm-hmm.
partly Adventist culture, where
Uh-huh.
we've been always told that you wait for the men to make the decision about you. You wait for
Yes.
the men to come to you. You getting the man is the prize, not
Yes.
realizing that you are the prize.
You are the prize. You are the prize. And it's not, excuse me, the other way around. And with that prize comes the power to not tolerate anything. And so though I truly, for the woman who is dating right now, I just encourage you, one, don't put off conversations that are important to clarify what it is
Yes.
you're in. Um,
Yes.
and and to be able, especially if you feel like there is a lack of truth and a lack of integrity, it's important
Yeah.
to clarify. You don't need to go about trying to guess. Like, you're two adults and two
Yes.
individuals who can be able to have an adult conversation. What is this and what are you doing? Um, and here's how I feel, and you can
Mm-hmm.
take how I feel, take it or leave it. And if that person, I'm a firm believer in, if a person is not receptive to what I have to say, then that person may just not be for me. Or they
Exactly.
may not be for me in that season. But
Yes.
I would rather you know where I stand. If you're not able to tell me where you stand, I would rather you know where I stand. And then we go from there. And so that was a really pivotal, those were pivotal conversations and moments in my life where I realized how much control I had. And it really, honestly, how much power and control, and being able to balance that power in getting to
Mm-hmm.
know somebody else, right? Not
Mm.
abusing it,
Yeah.
but to really hold it in a way that honors both me and honored Victor as well. And in Christian dating, we both waited until we were married.
Mm-hmm.
And that was hard. I'm not gonna lie,
Oh yeah.
because a lot of times we try to shy away from this whole thing of sex and what it
Mm-hmm.
means, and even
Mm-hmm.
desire and intimacy and longing.
Yeah.
Like, if you're spending more time with somebody and you genuinely like them, your body is going to respond physically to that
Right.
attraction. So coming from this place where, like you said, as Africans, we shun all of that. I mean, I grew up, my parents saying, no boyfriends.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when? Mom and dad, if we're supposed to get,
When you're
if
40.
we're gonna get married, if we're gonna get married and have children, like, when do we then, and so for my parents, so the biggest thing was school. I want you,
Yeah.
don't let school get in your way. So that was a major reason for them. And my dad was, I don't want to know who you're talking to unless if you're serious, because
Yeah.
I don't want to meet
10,000 boys.
20,000 Andrews or whatever. I mean, I don't want to meet all of these people and then I'm meeting them at functions and you're not talking to them anymore. And it's just awkward, you know? So he was like, unless if you're truly serious, I really don't want to meet this person this month, next month is somebody else, that kind of thing. So that really also gave me perspective to where I wasn't just bringing anybody to my parents,
Yeah.
unless if I was really serious about, hey, I want you to meet this person. And I believe Victor was the first person that I introduced to my parents as my boyfriend.
Wow. So how
Mhm.
long did you guys date then before you got married?
So Victor and I dated for 2 years, 2.5 years, if I'm not
And was
mistaken.
part of that long distance because you were now in California?
Most of our relationship was long distance.
Wow.
Yes. So we,
So for those girls, those young ladies who are in long distance relationships, what
uh-huh.
advice would you give them?
I would say make sure the relationship that you are getting into that's long distance is something you want to be in wholeheartedly,
Mhm.
genuinely, with intention. Like, don't invest time in a long distance relationship if something deep down inside you is like, I don't know about this one."
Yeah.
Again, it's all about making decisions in life that allow us to not carry unnecessary baggage and
Mm.
unnecessary stress.
Mhm.
And so for me, that was one. I was clear and certain that this was a relationship I was willing to invest in. And
Mhm.
so that would be one. Make sure the relationship that you're in is one you're willing to invest in. It doesn't necessarily mean it will end in marriage,
Right.
but it is one that you are at this moment in time willing to put time and effort in. And so not only with Victor and I long distance, with that long distance was a 3-hour difference. So
Oh yes.
that,
East
and we were
Coast, West
both in,
Coast.
yes, and we're both in school. And
Yeah.
he was, getting to the tail end of his studies and I was entering mine, which physical therapy school is one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life. So, being intentional about not letting my relationship get in the way of my school, but
Mhm.
and also my school not get in the way of this relationship that I'm prioritizing as well. So being able to really prioritize and make intentional time. So we had to be creative. If that means I'm talking to you at 6 a.m. for me, 9 a.m. for you, or before you go to bed, and I'm just getting ready to start studying, we made the most of it. And then being that he was also home in Michigan, when I came home, I was able to see him. And he took a
Yeah.
few trips out to California, and because we had decided, like I said, that to wait until marriage, that also came with making decisions like, hey, this is who you're going to stay with. These are the boundaries that we're setting. These
Yeah.
are our accountability partners. If we feel like things are like, we are just like, ooh, I really, really want to be with you, Wendy. I'm calling this person. I'm doing this. So all of those conversations we had to have as well in our relationship. Um, and and then the last thing I would say with long distance, being with somebody, especially if the long distance is due to you pursuing a dream and a goal
Yeah.
of yours,
Mhm.
being with somebody who supports you,
Yeah.
with no somebody who supports you and supports you 100%, where jealousy is not a factor, where they're not, I don't know what would maybe say, they're not secretly trying to tear you down, but also acting like
Mhm.
they're trying to support you. So
Right. Right.
having somebody, for me, because the long distance was because I was pursuing a dream of mine and a goal of
Yeah.
mine, it was important that Victor be somebody who's extremely supportive. And he was
Yes.
very supportive. He understood how important this was for me. And
Yeah.
so when we had those moments where it's like, hey, I was only able to talk to you for 2 hours today. I was only able to talk to you for a few hours this whole week, but they
Yeah.
understand that there's a reason behind that and it will not always be like this. So that was also one major point for us as well, being able to survive long distance.
What has the journey to motherhood been like for you? Because you've got a son and twin daughters.
The journey to motherhood has been transformative, has also been, as I was reflecting, I'm going to take a pause and say, as I was reflecting on what I wanted to share with you, I was thinking of my life. And I realized that in my 30s, I went through a lot of very transformative moments in a
Wait, aren't you
very
still in your 30s?
well, earlier 30s, I should say.
Okay.
I'm getting closer to 40. So I'll say in my earlier 30s,
Okay. Earlier thirties.
getting in my earlier 30s, just getting married, well, losing my dad,
Mhm.
graduating from higher education, getting married, becoming a mother. All of those are very big moments
Yes,
in
intense.
life. Intense. And
Mhm.
all of those for me happen in a short period of time. And
Yeah.
so motherhood added to that as a transformative and also a moment in my life that turned everything I know upside down.
Mm. Tell me more.
So I have, because of my own experience in motherhood, I've taken the time to study it a lot more. There's a term called matrescence, which is
Tell me, what does that mean?
matrescence is basically the transformation into motherhood.
Mm.
So the best analogy I can give, for some time I was a mom coach, a new mom coach. So this is all stuff that I in that journey that I have held on with me. So when a flamingo
Mhm.
gives birth, so we know flamingos to be pink, white, that color, right?
Yes.
When a
Yes.
flamingo gives birth, after birth, she sheds all of her feathers
Really?
and looks like what she's been through.
Woo!
And it takes her regrowing her feathers to come back to restore her to what she was or what she looked
Whoa.
like before giving birth.
Wow.
So that has been my experience where getting motherhood, I really felt like, who is this person?
Wow.
And how do I build her back up?
Mm.
And realizing that after motherhood, I will never go back to who Wendy was before she had
Before.
kids.
Woo!
Like that
That right there.
Wendy, that thing
Right
right there, you
there.
just gotta sit with it.
You gotta sit with it for a minute. Let's
You
take a moment of
gotta
silence. Every single person listening to this podcast, let's take a moment of silence. That we as women are never going
ever,
back to those women, those young
ever.
women, those ladies that we were before we became mothers. And for those husbands who listen to this podcast, take a moment of silence that your wife is never gonna be
Ever,
that one, that lady that she
ever.
was before she became
Yes.
a mother.
Yes, absolutely. Because you know, a big part of the angst of motherhood is trying to get back to that person
Yes. Huge
and
part.
consistently hitting a wall because you can't. And
Woo!
so for many of us, sometimes we then are like, okay, so I can't go back. So you're telling me like, that's it? It's like, so
Yeah.
now the beauty of motherhood is picking up the pieces, looking and
Yeah.
seeing what are the characteristics that I want to carry with me into this new identity that I now have as as a mother. What are the things
Wow.
from my past that I'm going to carry with me that I want to come along with me as I build this new identity? And when
Mm.
I came to that place, there's a peace that followed that reality. And that's really in a the idea of what matrescence is, the transformation of getting into motherhood. And a big part of it is seeing that you will never go back to who you were before. But it doesn't
Wow.
mean you're any less.
Right.
You are not any less. It's now a really beautiful moment for you to say, here's what I'm taking with me on this new journey and this new identity. And that's what motherhood has been. So that period for me of feeling like I don't know who I am.
Uh-huh.
I don't know who I am. I remember my first pregnancy with our son was both my pregnancies were God blessed. The first time with my son was great. It was wonderful. And I wanted a vaginal birth and I got that
Mm-hmm.
and it was really great. My husband really didn't know that he was a doula, but he was my doula. Like he literally coached me. He coached me through my birth and it came out the way we both wanted it to. So I'm so
Yeah.
thankful to him. He's a pastor, but he has a background in civil engineering. So that engineering
Okay.
brain, when it comes up and it really helped me out when I was giving birth to my son. So I gave birth to our son and I remember just being able to sit in the fact that whew, I've just been through this
Yeah.
life-changing moment and now we're carrying a baby. What? Okay. Right. Well,
Yep.
our story and my story is that 7 months after our son was born, I found out I was expecting again and did not find out it was twins until a couple weeks later when I made the appointment. And we found out that, it's not only one, it's two.
Oh. And you have a 7-month-old.
And I have a 7-month-old.
Wow.
And I had committed to breastfeeding. And so I breastfed as much as I could. And being that they were identical twins, it was a high risk pregnancy from jump. And I was seeing doctors pretty much every week for a very long time in my pregnancy. And
Mm.
I was on bed rest of sorts because they told me that I really should limit a lot of what I was doing. So most of my pregnancy I was on bed rest.
And you
And
have a new
so
and you have a baby.
and you have a baby who's now also wanting to learn to walk, who's doing this, and God is good. Our son started walking just as he turned 12 months. He decided at 12 months he didn't want to breastfeed anymore. So a lot of things happened where I didn't want to force him to quit, and I never had to force him to quit. But I say all of that to say that after the girls were born, I remember sitting in their room and here is my husband playing with our son and the girls. And I was sitting in the corner against the wall and they're playing, they're having a great time. The babies they weren't crawling yet, but they were just on the floor on their play mats. And Vaughn was the one who was moving, our son, who was moving around a whole lot more, but they're playing, they're laughing. And here I am, numb, sitting
Yeah.
against the wall. And I remember asking myself, I'm surrounded with so much joy, but
Yeah.
I'm not able to enjoy it.
Ooh.
I'm sitting in this room looking at my beautiful family, seeing how they're laughing, and here I am feeling as numb as ever can be and
Mm.
not being able to engage in the joy and the happiness and the love that's right in front of me. And yeah,
Wow. Do you think it's partly because you were just so exhausted? Or do
I
you feel like part of it was postpartum depression? Or what do you think was happening?
I absolutely believe that I was exhausted. And yes, it was postpartum depression, even though I never went to go get diagnosed. And
And
I'm
that's
going to
something I
tell
want to talk about.
absolutely,
Yes.
because for
Yes.
me, I'll tell you this, those papers they give you
Mm-hmm.
to fill out, how are you doing? And this and that and the other. When I went the first time, I mean, those papers, I got those papers, not even my own OB appointment. It was really, I got that paper. I forgot the name, the term of that paper, what it's called, but it's just asking you questions to see where you are mentally. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember when I was looking at that paper, filling it out because they gave it to me at the girls' first appointment. And I told myself, I'll never forget this. I was like, I could probably write more than likely. I'm sad. I'm more sad
Mm-hmm.
than not, than most days. I feel like crying. I feel overwhelmed. Like all the questions, like yes, 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 and yes. But you know what I
Yeah.
told myself? I'm not writing that.
Yeah.
Why? I don't want to be flagged by the system.
Yes.
And I don't want them to think something is wrong with me. And
Yes.
then they have to now start asking me more
Investigating.
questions, investigating, and what if they
And
now
then
have some,
what if I lose my kids?
what if I lose my kids? And so I did
Mm.
not respond to that paper in the way that I should have, even though I knew that if I was going to be honest, it was going to be red flags everywhere. My
That is,
encouragement, yes, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say that is so heartbreaking because, I know of women that have taken their own lives because
Mm.
of they were in that postpartum period and they had severe postpartum depression. And when I think about it and look back, they felt like they could not be honest about their feelings.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's a lot of work healthcare needs to do, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
that stigma is there for a reason. Because there are some people and some providers who do act out in that way. I always say for those who are able, because I know sometimes, especially in the country we're in, healthcare is not something where we can be as picky as,
Mm-hmm.
for some of us, cannot be as picky as we would like. But I
Yeah.
truly believe if you do have the means to interview and question your providers, because if you have taken the time to really handpick your provider, then you know that if you're going to be honest about where you are mentally, it's not going to be received as a, oh my gosh, her kids need to be taken away from her. Because if the process has been laid out in a way that it's supposed to, more than
Mm-hmm.
anything, your healthcare provider is supposed to come along beside you to help you in the journey as you're going through the depression. So they're supposed
Yes.
to give you the resources you need, to offer counseling, to offer various programs that they have
Mm-hmm.
available to you if that's where you are. Not everybody does that.
Yep. And I think that's so important because, especially for us as women of color, as a
Mm.
Black woman, you cannot even feel like you're safe. Because I remember how it was when I was an 18-year-old mom, when I
Mm.
was a 21-year-old. And
Mhm.
it's like people are judging you because they're
Oh, yeah.
like, oh, you're 18. What do you know? So you're going
Mhm.
through that judgment and you don't feel safe anywhere. And you don't want
Abs
to do anything that's going to flag you like you're a bad parent because now
Yep.
you're at risk of possibly losing your child to the foster
Mhm.
care system.
Mhm. Mhm. Yep. You are. And I remember talking about, even as a mother, and we know the
Hmm.
statistics in this country and
Yes.
how it ought to be celebrated when you make it through on the other side, because there's
Yeah.
so many who are not
It is
able to.
dangerous.
It is dangerous. The system is a very dangerous system. But even us ending up at the pediatrician we ended up at, it was hospital staff who just put us. So if you believe it or not, well, I know you know, but there's some facilities that will specialize in like Medicaid
Hmm.
insurance. And more often than not, there are, for all intents and purposes, for what it is, they are catered to the under underprivileged, for lack of a better term, or places and communities where people need more attention in various ways. So They put us in a facility with pretty much a facility that took a lot of Medicaid. We had private insurance. And I remember our pediatrician at the time was a Black lady. She said, you know, you don't have to come here. You don't have to come here. You have insurance and you have good insurance. You don't have to come here. But here, I know for a fact, here in this North Carolina, that the hospital personnel saw we were Black and just decided to put us wherever they wanted to put us,
Where they thought you fit in.
where they thought we fit in. Here's another thing. While we were there, I remember it was time for vaccinations. And the nurse comes in and says, oh no, you don't get this vaccination. This vaccination is for Medicaid patients. And I was like, there's a difference?
Yeah. How is
It's
there a
like, yes.
difference? Why is there a difference?
Her clear words, and I'll never forget. And it was after that the doctor, the Black lady, was like, you don't have to come here. You can
And
find
that's what's
another place.
scary. And that's
That's
what's scary.
scary.
Because I can tell you that for me, I went to a Medicaid clinic because that's the insurance I had. And I had secondary because my secondary insurance was actually on my mom's. But because I was pregnant, I had to get Medicaid.
Mm-hmm.
And my Blue Cross Blue Shield wasn't paying for any of those things. And it's like, you know that you're there because you don't have good insurance. You don't have any insurance. And you can see the other people that are there getting help, undocumented workers and all this and all that. And you can see even at that young age, I could see the difference in treatment when I went to that clinic and when I had gone to a different clinic with the Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Yep. Yep. There is a difference night and day, and this is why we say the system is broken. And so you can understand why the reservations that are there when you are going
Yeah.
through something like postpartum depression. One of the
Yeah.
things that I'm an advocate for is really new mothers, because I've been there and I know how transformative the experience is, but also how lost I felt.
Yeah.
And the question that comes to mind is, the baby is taken care of. From the moment
Yeah.
that baby is born, that baby is
Yep.
taken care of. You're going to take that baby to the hospital to the pediatrician every month for a checkup. That baby's
Yep.
good. It's
Baby's good.
you, the mother. Because if you have physically checked off all the boxes, your next appointment after you leave, unless if there's something going on medically that needs to be checked on every week, but after you've given birth, your next appointment more than likely is 6 weeks after you've
6
given
weeks.
birth.
Yep.
And after that 6 weeks, if everything is still okay physically, you're done.
Yep.
So if you've had a okay birth, no complications, if your recovery at home is okay, you only see the doctor 2 times.
Yeah.
But here you've gone through such a transformative moment in your life where physically
Let's
traumatic.
be honest. It is a traumatic experience.
It is trauma. It is trauma to the most. And so here you are, the doctor says all clear, you can go back to doing whatever it is you were doing before. And for many of us, that also means going back to work because you can't afford
Yes.
to stay home for longer than you would
Right.
like. But here you are still carrying the pieces of what's left of you and really have not been given the chance to be able to even think through, what did I just go through?
Right.
What does this mean for me? And so it's this question of the baby's taken care of, but who's taking care of the mother?
Yes. And that's one thing about, what I really appreciate about our African community, because when this happens at home, you have your village, you have your community, you have people that are going to be there to help you take care of the baby and take care of you. Make sure you've got milk coming in, make sure you are well hydrated, all these
Yes.
things. But
Yes.
when you're here and you're an immigrant, for instance,
Mhm.
if you don't have that much of an extended family, and
It's
also because of just how the system is here, because everybody's busy with their jobs, you don't
yes.
have that support. When you
You
if you
don't.
have people come and help you for a week or two, that's like incredible. But you're
Yes.
like just trying to figure things out with your husband. And then if
Mhm.
you are a single parent,
Even
you don't
more.
even really have that.
Yep. Yep. And I was blessed. We have been blessed for our family when the girls were born. They were born right before the pandemic. And my mom was able to come for about 3 months. And that,
Life saving.
as ever, yeah, indebted to my
Wow.
mom for being able to do that because like you said, it's hard. It's hard in this country to be able to even have that much time to come and
Yes.
help. My in-laws as well, they live not too far from us, about 2.5 hours, which is not too bad. The idea that one of the things that I really try to, as I'm talking to new mothers and connecting with new mothers, is tap into your community.
Yes.
That is a lifeline.
Yes.
And even if you and your husband or you and your partner have been used to doing things just the two of you, you have a routine. You introduce a baby, things will change drastically.
Yes.
And so being able to tap into community, reliable, dependable people that you have chosen and handpicked to help you along the journey is so important. And not putting yourself on the back burner. Like, as you are raising this child, and I believe God is able to give us what we need in order to raise the children
Yes.
because it's a lifelong journey. Once you become a
Yes.
mother, you will always be a mother.
Yes.
Always. So there's this idea that the whole idea of mothering a child is always it's always going to take place, right?
Yeah.
But in addition to that is you also being able to be you also being able to what's the word I'm looking for? Recover and
Yeah.
restore, renew, as you are on this journey as well. And many times we find that as women, we are not the best at keeping ourselves on the forefront.
Yes.
And I
So,
think it's
how do you find time then for self-care? Like you said, as women, we are not good about keeping ourselves at the forefront. You have small children. You've been married for how long now?
we've been married 2014, so we will be clocking year 11 this year.
Wow, that's crazy. That's a
I know.
long time. That's a long time. And I still think you're a baby. Wow, 11 years almost. And
Yeah.
so how do you find that time to take care of yourself, and how do you spice up your marriage? You're over a decade now.
Yeah. So I believe self-care is very specific to a person.
Mhm.
What is self-care for you is not necessarily self-care for me. And I remember when I was reading up on as I was trying to find ways to find my footing and my grounding in motherhood, I remember like, okay, self-care,
Mhm.
self-care. And it's like, okay, take a bubble bath. Okay, take time to take a walk. And I'll do these things and I'm like, I don't feel any different. What's going
Yeah.
on? And what I found for me was really taking the time to find out what makes me feel cared for.
Yes.
What makes me feel what actually even fills me up and feels like I've been taken care of. So for
Yes.
me, it has been about finding those things because the other thing about self-care, it changes. The things I
Yes.
did to take care of myself when I was 25 are not necessarily the things I will do now that will take care of me.
Yeah.
So I found that over the years of motherhood, our son will be 7. So I've been a mother for 7 years, that my self care routines and habits have changed. But it's always about answering the question, what is the thing that will make me feel the most cared for? And what is the thing that will fill me up the most? So currently, my self care is about taking time to read. I love reading. I've always loved reading, so taking time to read. It's also been about taking time to take care of myself physically. I
Mm-hmm.
recently just started going to a personal trainer, and that has been really great for me because I realized that's something I need, somebody who will
Yeah.
guide me through as
Yeah.
opposed to me working out on my own. And also taking time for myself, whether it's 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at night, just me.
Yeah.
And then if, and also this season for myself is building friendship. So those are my self-care routines that I found, and how that translates into marriage and even keeping our marriage spicy is that you have to bring two people who are intentional about taking care of themselves
Mm-hmm.
coming together to intentionally take care of their marriage.
Yes.
So if I'm not intentional about taking care of myself,
Mm-hmm.
then it's going to be hard for me to also intentionally take care of my marriage
Yes.
because marriage requires that I am intentional about the us that has come together as one and the two individuals that are coming together as well.
Yeah.
We Victor and I have conversations about what does it look like for you? What do you need in this season? And what do I
Mm-hmm.
need in this season? And one of the things we have is a standing date night Sunday nights.
Oh
And I'm
no, I'm
laughing.
I'm getting into your date night time. Better wrap it up.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. I'm laughing because we both are unavailable for date night tonight because this is a Sunday.
Lucky me.
Lucky you. However, we've had a conversation about what that looks like for us the rest of the week. Well, when can we then make time for ourselves?
Yeah.
There was one season where his schedule was so busy that we were just like, we need one day, one night out of the week. Let's boil a pot of water, drink a cup of tea, and talk about our day. When we first started dating, when we first got married, well, when we were dating, it was all about letter writing.
Yeah.
And we came up with our own customized hashtags. And so we would write letters. That kept us going for a long time. And then life got busy and we couldn't write letters anymore. So now what do we do? How do we keep up communication? And I truly believe to keep the spice in your marriage, like I said, two people are coming together and committing to being intentional about marriage, but also
Mm-hmm.
forever having conversation about where you
Yeah.
are, what you need, and how to go about meeting each other's needs and each of you feeling and being honored. That's what really brings the spice because you will go through different seasons and different growth
Mm-hmm.
periods, right?
Right.
I'm a firm believer in counseling. And I've shared
Counseling
this
personally or together?
both. I've gone
Both.
to therapy. I'm a firm
Yeah.
believer. When I say counsel, I'll say therapy. Therapy individually and therapy together. So I've been to
Like
therapy
just as maintenance.
as maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the first as maintenance, and also if you feel like something happening that you need some help with. So sometimes it could be events in life that happen that you need to go, right? Or it
Yeah.
could also just be we need maintenance. So at the end of, I think it was a couple years ago, Victor and I have shared this story and we've had this conversation before with a few other people.
Mm-hmm.
I woke up and I said I'm not happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I said I don't know where the unhappiness is coming from,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm happy and I want to be happy with you.
Yeah.
Because we're committed to this thing. Because
Yeah.
we've said that divorce is not an option
Right.
unless if any one of us touches the deal breaker. So we have deal breakers, but for
Yeah.
us, it's not an option. So I was like, I'm not happy and something's happening. So I was like, okay, well, I think we need to go to counseling. And so we went
Mm-hmm.
to counseling. And what we found was that going back to what we were talking about, the major changes that us going from 1 to 3 children
Yeah.
was a very big seismic shift for our marriage.
Yeah.
We just did not have the words to articulate what was happening. And because we were both going through it, we were not able to correctly identify that's what was happening.
Yeah.
And so I come and I say I'm not happy, and we find out that, oh, yeah, let's uncover why. And the why is we've gone through a very life-changing experience, not just from 1 to 2, but 1 to 3 in a
And
very
not only
short
that,
span.
in a short period of time, and so you're dealing with a baby and
Mhm.
then newborns.
Mhm. Mhm.
Oh, hold
Absolutely.
on. Let me change this so that it's not my regular TV. That way I can always edit this part out.
Mhm.
Yeah. Wow. And for you to actually recognize, because what ends up happening is that people say, I'm not happy, and they think it's because of the other person, and they're not happy in this marriage, and they want to exit
Mhm. Mhm.
without uncovering the real source of why they're unhappy.
Mhm. Mhm. I am. And I am a one of the things I appreciate about where I am in life right now is being able to speak how I feel
Mm-hmm.
and being open to exploring how to solve the thing. Because for me to just be like, well, I'm unhappy, I'm leaving. Well, where am I going? I
Right.
am very aware that if I leave, I'm carrying baggage that has not been dealt with.
Yeah,
And that baggage I would take into the next relationship.
absolutely.
So
100%.
let me at least unpack the baggage and see what's inside the bag. And if what's inside the bag is unresolvable, that's a different story. But
Right.
if what's inside the bag is manageable and it requires just being able to have more conversation, being able to identify what our new priorities are, now that
Mm-hmm.
we are on the other side of parenting and not only juggling our marriage, but also parenting and our individual lives, you see all the dynamics that are kind of in that bag and you say, okay, let me unpack. There's value
Yeah.
here. I said yes to my husband because I absolutely love that man. And so I'm not walking away until I have felt like I have done everything in my power to uncover what may be this place we're in of unhappiness. And
Yeah.
it was awesome because we both were committed to finding somebody who would honor our both of us
Mm-hmm.
and listen to both of us and help us through. And a big part of it, like I mentioned, was really being able to look at our priorities again.
Yeah.
What are our priorities? Are our priorities still the same? And then zeroing in on those priorities. And that was really great for us. I think I said about 2 years ago. I think it was year
Mm-hmm.
8, 7 or 8, year 7 or 8. And so part of keeping a spark in marriage is if you see that there's something that needs to be addressed, addressing it.
Wow.
I don't believe in sweeping things under the rug
Mm-hmm.
because sooner or later you still have to clean up under the rug.
Yep. Because you can't keep piling things under the rug.
You can't keep piling things under the rug. The rug will need to be lifted sooner or later.
Yep. And just because you're not dealing with it and not looking at it doesn't mean that it's not there and it's not
Mm,
festering. It's like a wound.
absolutely.
If you ignore
Absolutely.
it, you will have your leg chopped off.
Absolutely. There is this picture of I remember one time talking about like addressing the elephants in the room. There's this picture
Mm-hmm.
of of an elephant that breaks through a wall getting in the room. And it's like as big as an elephant is, you can't ignore it. It's
No,
there.
you can't.
You cannot ignore it. It's there. And as as women, we going back to the idea of being able to really honor ourselves,
Mm.
right? And in honoring ourselves is not putting off things that we need to have conversation about, not
Yes.
putting off times when we see that this is something that needs to be addressed.
Yes.
And so yeah, that's really been for us. And then before the kids were born, we waited almost 4 years after we got
Mm-hmm.
married before we had kids. And that we were intentional about that because one of the things that we wanted was to be able to say that we knew each other before kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that once the kids left, we still had an identity
Yeah.
as opposed to our identity immediately being tied to children.
Yeah.
And then they leave the house and it's just like, who are you?
Who
Like,
are you?
I don't know who you are. So we waited almost 4 years. And even after we had kids, we're like, oh, we could have waited a little bit longer. But whatever the case, before we started having children, I love traveling and Victor loves traveling too. So we would take a trip every year on our anniversary and we would
Mm.
splurge. We would splurge on that anniversary where it would be at a place where we normally wouldn't go or a place we normally wouldn't stay at and just be like, hey, we're doing something for our anniversary, honoring our time together. That kept the spice in our marriage. Of course, once kids were born, we didn't
Yeah.
travel as much, but it was even one year setting up a picnic in our master bedroom and making the most of it and cooking
Yeah.
a 4-course meal and just the little things where you
Yeah.
still continue to honor each other and love each other. And
Yeah.
and also, one thing I remember one time Victor was like, I wanna get away. And he went to the cabin and went hiking, took a 3-day trip, and that's what he needed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I said, go for it. And for me, I also know that I'm safe in sharing what I need and he's safe in sharing what he needs.
That is powerful.
Because you come back to that place. Two people that are intentional about upholding their individuality and coming together and now upholding this thing that we have, this marriage and this life that we're building. And so yeah, those really have been great moments and periods for us in our marriage that have really kept us going. Individual therapy, couples therapy, trips, conversation.
Conversation, talking to each other, not at each other, to each
Talk
other.
to each other. One of the things Victor and I say is that I never grew up around a home where I never saw my parents fight
Mm-hmm.
or argue in front of us.
Yeah.
Obviously, we knew that they had disagreements. We knew that they argued. I don't know about arguing and how far the arguing went, but we knew there were definitely disagreements, right? But they never did it in front of us. I appreciated that my parents did that. I do wish as I got older that I saw a little bit more of what conflict resolution looked like.
I say the same thing all the time.
Yeah, I do. I wish
Yeah.
that as I got older, I got to see how they were able to resolve conflict
Yeah.
because I know they were able to. And
Yeah.
so it would have been nice to kind of see that more. But I also
Yes.
appreciated what they were doing when we were younger and not really fully able to understand what they were arguing about. And I think kids being kids, you're going to pick a side.
Right.
So I can understand how when we were younger they were doing that. All that to say that and I never heard my father raise his voice at my mother ever.
Yeah.
So one of the things I told Victor was, I don't do yelling. I don't know what it's like for a man to yell at me because my father has never
Mm-mm.
yelled at me and my father has never yelled at my mom. And so I want you to know that that's not something that I do. And he's not one to yell either or raise his voice as well. We had our first disagreement after we got married.
Yeah.
We it was it was really it was one of those moments where you're like, "Huh, here we are disagreeing. Wait a minute, I can't leave the house. Where am I going to go? I'm stuck with you." Whereas before I could be like, "I'm leaving and I'm
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 leaving.
gone," right? And it's like, "Wait, we are in this two-bedroom apartment. What are you talking about?" And then I gotta sleep. I'm going in the same bed as you. Oh my goodness. So that moment for us really forced us one. I remember when we were able to come together and talk about what had happened and what we had disagreed about. We walked
Hmm.
away with two things. One, we did not like the version of ourselves in that moment. And so we were like, I don't like you and I interacting with each other in that way. I think we can disagree and still be respectful to one another in our
Yeah.
disagreement. So that was one of the things we walked away with. And the second part was just that idea of being able to talk about what it is that we are in disagreement about and getting to the bottom of the issue.
Yeah. And not letting it fester.
And not letting it fester. There are a lot of things that marriage would teach you. And one of the things I've discovered is that as you're dating, there's no relationship that's perfect, right?
No.
There are things and there are flaws that you see in your dating relationship. You will get married. Those things will become worse in marriage.
Yes.
You will start
Yes.
having children. Those things will become worse in parenting.
Yes.
So this idea of like you see their flaws or if you find that communication is not your strong suit as a couple, don't think that marriage is going to fix it.
Right.
Marriage is going to further expose how
Yes.
communication is not a strong point in your relationship.
Yeah.
When you start having children, parenting will expose further that communication
Yes.
is not a strong point in your relationship. So, the importance of identifying something and being able to deal with it and to be able to find the tools you need in order to fix that is so important. And so, when we had that first argument, we're like, oh, we identified what that thing was for us and we're like, okay, we got to deal with this
Yes.
because you do realize as you're going that these things, you will carry them with you. They don't disappear. They don't go away.
Absolutely.
And so really naming something for what it is, dealing with it, finding the resources and the tools, reading the books you need to read. One of the things my husband and I do, we read books together, or we say, hey, you read that, I'm reading this book, you should read it too, and we can talk about it. Or we read a book together. All of those
Yeah.
things as well. But yeah, that I would say those are some of the things that I would share.
What do your friendships look like now, since that's one of the things that you do to fill your cup? What do your friendships look like with you having small children and a husband, and how do you cultivate those relationships and sustain them?
I'm laughing because I'm thinking back on you and Rowena's conversation about friendship.
Did you call her after and say, who was that friend?
I did. And she still hasn't told
I
me.
knew you would.
I absolutely did. I said, who's this friend you're talking about? But to answer your question, I have never been one to have 20,000 friends.
Yeah.
That's not Wendy's story. I am good with like 2, 3 good solid friendships.
Yep.
There are 2 discoveries I've made after I turned 35 that I realized, oh, my sisters are my friends.
Yeah.
My sisters are my
Yeah.
friends. And for a long time, I've been very content with my sisters being my friends. I got 3 sisters. So my thing has always been like, listen, you can do whatever you want. I got 3
Because
sisters and they're my
I have
friends.
friends.
I got friends. But
And I also
um
think it's part of you being the baby, though, because it's like you,
absolutely. Mhm. No, it's absolutely right. And a big part of it is because I am the baby. And so, but I've found myself praying in the last, I'll say even 2 years, where I said, Lord, I want to have friends outside of my sisters because I think it's also important to
yes,
be able to cultivate friendships with people who don't think like you, who didn't grow up in the same household as you, who do things differently, who will challenge you in a different way than your own blood will, right? So,
yeah,
right, I would say for now, I have identified, I have, outside of my sisters, I have some good friends that I met college. Even my cousins who are my sisters, they're my friends as well, but some of my friends, I would say, through college I met them, and then even in pastoral ministry. To cultivate friendship, I'm not good at always picking up a phone and talking to somebody. So, but I am committed to checking in and really having realistic expectations because
yeah,
life is busy for me,
yes.
life is busy for them. We're not going to talk all the time. But I
And
know
also depending
that
what season you are in life.
yes, I have a couple friends who we will go, like you guys talked about last time, we will go months without talking.
Yeah,
And we actually are intentional about scheduling time to talk. That's what friendship looks like on this side. And
yeah,
sometimes when you're older and you have multiple responsibilities, you realize that in order to maintain a friendship, you have to be a little bit more intentional. So that means scheduling talking time. And for some people, be like, oh, that's forcing it. No, it's not. Because if you
mm-mm,
don't schedule it, you'll find yourself not really being able to connect. So I have a friend who we would text each other like, hey, this week, what day can you talk? I think I'm available 12 p.m. on Sunday. Sounds good. I'm putting it in my calendar. I tell my
yep,
husband I'm going to be on the phone with my friend because our conversation is probably going to be 2, 3 hours. But it's about that intentionality of realizing that
intentionality.
we don't have all the time to just pick up the
Yes,
phone and be like, hey girl, what you doing today? Okay. And then
exactly.
being quiet for 2, 3 hours. Like what I do with my sisters, I'm not always able, it does not always translate into, other friendships. So really talking about, okay, this works well, sounds good. I have a friend who lives about an hour and a half away from me. And for she and I, we say, okay, this month, let's meet up and let's do brunch. And we spend half the day together, that kind of thing. So it's seeing where we are and being able to honor where we are and our responsibilities and being intentional about how we get together, talking about, where are you in life, what's going on, celebrating one another the best way that we can. I think
Yes.
sometimes social media, there's the good part about social media is you can keep up with your friends if they are, especially if they're going post what's going on in their lives. So that also
But
helps as
also, it's
well.
that part of social media where you know that those are curated versions of people's
Now
lives.
this is also true. And this is why it's important to connect outside of it. I have friends who is like, hey, we did this, somebody graduated, somebody did this, like, great. But yes, you're right. Social media, there is a facade of
Hmm.
sorts that takes place. That is the ugly side of it.
So, who are two women, dead or alive, that you would want to have dinner with and just glean wisdom from
Man,
or be girlfriends
um,
with?
so I'm definitely an Oprah Winfrey fan girl. I
Okay.
grew up in the age where her show was, going on. So
Yes.
I still would love to be able to sit down and talk with Oprah Winfrey. And then I'm going to say, I know you said only two, but I would love to talk to my grandmothers.
Mm.
Both of them. I would say yes, both of them. But especially my grandmother on my father's side. I came across some news that was really interesting that I didn't know, and
Ooh.
it kind of brought a lot of things into perspective. So I would love to be able to, in this older age, to have a conversation with my grandmothers,
Hmm.
glean and
Interesting.
learn as much as I can from them.
What about women in the Bible? What two
With
women would you want to sit with and talk and have
Okay.
tea in your brand new mansion up in heaven?
Yes. Okay. I definitely would love to talk to Rahab.
Okay. Tell me,
Uh,
because she is my one of my two that I love.
Goodness. Rahab has been painted as where people try to spiritualize her her past, or they like
Mm-hmm.
to say that her being a prostitute was a of hers, and they've spiritualized her life and said, oh, by the time the spies were coming to her, um she had let that life go. They try to spiritualize the
And
fact
like
that she
based
was
on
a
what?
prostitute. Right. They really
Right.
try to
Because it's like
spiritualize it.
take it as it is.
Take it as it is. This is who she was when the spies
Right.
came. Like, let's not spiritualize the whole thing. But I would love to talk to her and really get an understanding of just how she went about securing her and her family's life, like their lives,
Yes.
really negotiating.
Yeah.
The art of
She had
negotiation,
negotiation skills.
the
Yes,
art.
the art of negotiation.
So I would really love to talk to her more about that. That's one I would say. And the other one I would, let me see. This is really interesting because they're the other one I would say is the Shunammite woman.
Oh, yes, that's a good one. That is a good one.
She was a boss.
Mm.
She was a boss
There was
lady.
a phase in my life when I was in the Shunammite woman phase.
Yeah.
Like I would not take a no from nobody. I'll be like, bring me the boss, you know?
Yes, yes.
And that's what
And
she did.
she was a woman who was very well to do, known in her city and for her work and what she was able to accomplish. So
Hmm.
a lot of times she's not presented as such. So to
Yeah.
be able to even learn business, but also how to balance it all with her belief in God,
Her
right?
faith,
And her faith,
that faith,
that
all
faith.
is well. Like she is the all
All
is well
is
woman.
she is the all is well. I remember speaking about that. Like all is well, and she continues to go and will not stop until she speaks to the
The
prophet.
boss.
It's like, Shunammite woman, you should be at home planning a funeral. You
Mm-mm.
should be picking out a casket. You should be going to
Mm-mm.
tell your husband that your son, your only child, is dead. But here you
Nope.
are on a carriage rushing to go to the man of God.
Yes, you men of God, you did this. So I am coming back to you. And I have faith.
Back. I'm bringing back to
I
the
am
source.
coming back and I have faith that
Mm-hmm.
it will be well.
Yes.
I'm not even
Yes.
going to tell my husband that anything happened because nothing happened.
Nothing happened. As far as I'm concerned. Yep.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah. Wow. Okay.
Mhm.
This takes us to our lightning round. You survived. You did it. Yay.
Yay.
I'm going to ask you 3 lightning round questions.
Okay.
Question number 1. What is
Mhm.
the one word for this season in your life?
The one word is blessing.
Mm.
Blessing. I just got done reading I'm part of a Bible study group. I just got done reading going through Genesis. And I
Mm-hmm.
am obsessed with the blessing that God pours and calls from Noah to Abraham, to Jacob, to Joseph, and this blessing just continuing on and on and on and on. And that's my word, blessing.
I am curious since you just got done with Genesis. So I did a deep dive into
Uh-huh.
Genesis.
Uh-huh.
And I am convinced. I want to hear your thoughts. And right now, nobody can convince me otherwise. I am convinced that
Huh?
when Eve was tempted and took that fruit, Adam was right there with her and he
Okay.
was complacent because he was there when it happened. Because my Bible says
Uh-huh.
that, and she gave it to Adam, to her husband, or whatever it says, but she gave
Uh-huh.
it to him who was there. It said he
Uh-huh.
was there because it
Uh-huh.
seems like Eve is always blamed, right? That she's the one who
Mhm.
took the fruit, who did this, but Adam was there with her.
So I'm not a biblical scholar, but like you said, but like you said, having been married to a pastor and having been born into a pastoral family as well, I remember my husband saying that there are various thoughts in who was with
Hmm.
her. That could mean, so who was with her has double meaning, in that is could be physical, standing right
Hmm.
beside her, or with her in thought and mindset. What she believed at that moment and what she was responding to the serpent is also what he believed as well. So I I'm at the point where I will say I don't know. What I know is their actions,
There, both of their
their
actions
their actions.
got us here.
Sin came, and when God found them, he spoke to
They
both
were
of them.
together.
He spoke to both of them. So I don't know who was under the tree. I don't know whether it was in thought or it was physically, but what I do know is their actions had
Got us
consequences.
here.
Yes. And God talked with both of them when he found them as he was walking in the garden.
Spoken like a true pastor's wife. I love it. Okay, so question number 2. If you were a flower, what flower would you be?
So I love calla lilies.
I'm gonna have to Google that to see what color lilies look like. And don't worry,
Yes.
guys, I will put a picture up.
Yes. I love calla lilies, and I think calla lilies can grow. You can find you can find them in water at times, and you can also find them on dry ground. And I
Hmm.
love their beauty. Very simple, but very classy, beautiful, and also the versatility.
Do they have a smell or they're no fragrance?
If they do,
No.
I have never smelled a calla lily and be like, "Ooh, that's a nice smell." The way roses, yeah, no, they don't.
And last question, when you think of the day Monday, what color comes to mind?
The day Monday. When I think of the day Monday, the color that comes to mind is blue.
That is correct.
Yes.
It's so funny because, I think of days as colors. And it's funny
Huh?
when someone gives me a different color, I'll be like,
Uh-huh.
that is wrong. Because in my mind, it's not even like, I'm glad you think of that day as that color. Yeah, that's very good that you have a different color than mine. No, if it is not what is my color, then it is wrong. So I love that you think of Monday as blue because I think of Monday as blue. That is very
Absolutely.
interesting. Yes.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. This was so amazing. I really, really
Oh,
enjoyed talking to you.
you are so welcome. Thank you. Thank you. I had a great time.